It's Ashley at the Silver Bay Public Library, and I'm back once again with a read aloud for you guys. If you remember last time, we were working on a choose-your-own-adventure novel called The Lost Jewels of Nabooti, but I have a different book for us this time, because I want you guys to learn what choose-your-own-adventure books are all about, but I also want to give you guys the opportunity to go back through these books and understand and find your own endings too. Find your own endings to them too, because they have like anywhere from, I'd say, 15, 30, 40 for these small books, till like if you get a bigger one it could have hundreds of endings. But for today I'm switching to another one of R.A. Montgomery's books. This one is called The Abominable Snowman. And it says here, choose your own adventure, choose from 28 possible endings, so that should be fine. And there's a secret ending online too, so I'm guessing 29 or so. But without much further ado, I think I'm just going to jump right in. We'll go through a few endings today, and then again on Monday, and then I think our library here has probably like 5 or 6 of these books, so for the rest of the summer, as part of the summer program, I'll just be reading different endings from these. So I'll just dive right in. And if this is your first one seeing for the Choose Your Own Adventure series, I'll just read the intro here for you guys to understand a bit more what they're about. Beware and warning. This book is different from other books. You and you alone are in charge of what happens in this story. There are dangers, choices, adventures, and consequences. You must use all of your numerous talents and much of your enormous intelligence. The wrong decision could end in disaster, even death. But don't despair. At any time you can go back and make another choice, alter the path of your story, and change its result. You and your best friend Carlos have traveled to Nepal in search of the fabled Yeti, or Abominable Snowman. Last year, while the two of you were mountain climbing in South America, a guide told you about the legendary creature, and yet you haven't stopped thinking about the Yeti since. Carlos arrived and went straight into the mountains when a Yeti sighting was reported. He hasn't been heard of in 3 days. A late monsoon storm has moved in and the mountains are almost impassable. You know Carlos will depend on you to do the right thing. But what is it? And now, we're off to an adventure. You are a mountain climber. 3 years ago, you spent the summer at a climbing school in the mountains of Colorado. Your instructors said that you had natural skills as a climber. You made rapid progress, and by the end of the summer, you were leading difficult rock and ice climbs. That summer, you became close friends with a boy named Carlos. The two of you made a good climbing team. Last year, you and he were chosen to join an international team. The expedition made it to the top of 2 unclimbed peaks in South America. One night on that expedition, the group was seated around the cook tent at the base camp. The expedition leader, Franz, told stories of climbing in the Himalayas, the highest mountains in the world. The Himalayas form a great natural wall between India and China, with Nepal tucked in amid the peaks. Everest, K2, and Annapurna are the best-known mountains in the Himalayas. These and many other peaks have been climbed. Still, other sly and remote areas where few humans have gone. There, said Franz, in the high valleys beneath the snowfields, lives the Yeti, sometimes called the Abominable Snowman. The Yeti is said to be a huge beast, Franz tells you. Perhaps a cross between a gorilla and a human. People cannot agree what it is. Is the Yeti dangerous? Carlos asked. Franz shrugged. Some say it is. Other people say the Yeti is very gentle. Have you seen one? You inquire. No, almost no one has. The best proof of the Yeti's existence is a set of very large footprints discovered in the 1950s by a British expedition. No one has ever photographed one that I have heard of, Franz answers. But still, the stories persist. You and Carlos decide then and there to find the Yeti. When you return from South America, the two of you raised money from the International Foundation for Research into Strange Phenomena. Your goal? Prove positive that Yeti exists. You will find and photograph the Yeti. That is what brings you to Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal. Your problems, though, have already begun. 2 days ago, Carlos left by helicopter to look over the terrain near Mount Everest. The helicopter returned without him. The pilot told you that Carlos decided to stay up at the Everest base camp to check out a report that a Yeti had been seen. He had a radio transmitter, but you have received no word from him. The weather turned bad and radio communication was interrupted. You have an appointment to speak with R.N. Runal, the director of expeditions and mountain research, and an authority on the Yeti. He knows of your plans. You need his help with official permits for the expedition. He will also have good advice and information. But what about Carlos? We can either decide to cancel the meeting and search for Carlos, or if we think Carlos is okay, go ahead and meet with Runal. And I don't want to leave a friend behind, but maybe Runal can help us get Carlos. Because if Carlos is as good as he says he is, he should be fine for a little bit. So we're going to say Carlos is okay and go ahead. You walk down a street bordered by tall pines. They are green-blue and the branches and needles are very fine and delicate. Hanging from the upper branches are what look like huge tear-shaped blackish-brown fruit. You stop and look up, wondering what they are. Then one moves, spreads giant wings, and flaps off. They're bats, the largest bats you've ever seen. You reach the foreign ministry and you are shown to a waiting room. You wait a few minutes and then are ushered in to meet R.N. Runal, Director of Expeditions and Mountain Research for the Nepalese government. Welcome to our country. We wish you success, but I have some bad news. The expedition you have proposed could be very dangerous. You look at him, not knowing what to expect. Recently, a large expedition set out without telling us they were going after the Yeti, says Runal. They used guns and traps and tried to kill one of them. The Yeti are angry. Mr. Runal, we just want to find a Yeti. We have no intention of ever hurting a Yeti. I know that. We have checked up on you. It is a shame about the others. I must advise against going into Yeti territory. I could arrange a trip for you into the Terai region, out of the mountains and the jungle area. You could photograph and study the tigers. They are famous and also dangerous. Later, perhaps you could conduct the expedition you are leading. We can either decide to go ahead with the expedition or postpone the expedition to let the Yeti calm down and go search for the tigers instead. And now I know it might not be a good idea to go after the Yeti, but we need to find our friend Carlos, so we're going to go ahead with the expedition anyway. I appreciate your warning and kind offer of the alternative to go to Terai. You say, we are committed to this expedition. We will search for the Yeti with openness and friendship. R.N. Runal nods his head and speaks quietly to his assistant in Nepali. Within minutes you have the necessary papers for the expedition, stamped in the proper places with the official seal of the Nepalese government. As you shake hands before leaving, he stops you. If you are determined to go on your expedition, it would be easier and safer if I come with you. What should you do? Having a government official along with you might just cause delays and bureaucratic snafus. On the other hand, he could also smooth the way. So we can either accept or decline his offer. And if we're looking for Carlos, I think we'll accept it to have some extra help. Now that he's a member of your expedition, Runal sets out a government team to set up your base camp and find Carlos. Success! Carlos is found and rejoins you. Yay! Runal turns to be an excellent team member. 6 porters carry your food and tents and supplies. This leaves you free to explore the steep valley sides and the small villages along the way. The days are long, beginning at first light and going until sunset. Your legs ache from the constant pounding as you walk along the narrow trails which have served these Nepalese people for hundreds of years. Above you are bright blue skies dotted with clouds. The snow and ice flanks of Lhotse, Pumeri, and Everest rise above the green of the lower slopes. As you approach a village, Runal points out a large building with a red roof, which stands above the small, neat houses clustered about it. That's the monastery where there lives a monk, a Buddhist monk who has lived with the Yeti. But I thought no one had really ever seen one. I thought no one alive had spent time with the Yeti. Runal answers, a well-kept secret. Those who share the secret knowledge of the Yeti are pledged to reveal this knowledge only to appointed people. You and you alone are one of the appointed. It has been seen in the stars. It has been read in your hand. What do you mean? Who saw it in the stars? Who read it in my hand? Runal does not answer for several minutes. Then he speaks. If you accept the secret knowledge, your life will change. You will never be the same. Decide now. I mean, we're trying to get knowledge on the Yeti, so let's accept the secret knowledge, I guess. I gladly accept your offer. I'm ready for the knowledge. Come with me. He leads you to the monastery. Carlos stays behind. You and Runal enter the monastery through a huge wooden door. It is dark inside, but you make out the figure of an old man seated on the floor. Behind him is a statue of Buddha. The man welcomes you and motions you to sit before him. You see that he is wearing the robes of a monk. You are served yak butter tea, a thick broth that you find hard to swallow. Listen well with heart, head, and body. Listen with eyes more than with ears. Heed the cry of the Yeti, the old monk tells you. You can hear bells in the distance and wind in the pine trees just outside the window. It's beautiful. You sit for what seems like hours, listening with your whole being. Finally, the monk speaks. Time now to go on the next journey. What journey, you ask? This is getting too weird. A continuation of the one you are already on, he replies. If you agree to take the journey, or we can decide to not continue. But I think we're going to continue and continue on our journey. Runal is still with you. He taps you on the shoulder and you rise and follow him to the back of the monastery behind the golden Buddha. The heavy smell of rose-scented incense fills the air. The Yeti are guides to Shangri-La. They take the chosen people in this hidden valley, which many have heard of and only a few have seen. You nod, wondering what comes next. One last chance, my friend. Turn back now and live a normal life with your friend Carlos. Go ahead and accept the life of the secret world. Let's go on and see what happens. I am ready, Runal. Lead the way. Runal taps 3 times on the back of the Buddha, near a spot where its skull and neck joins. It makes a clanging sound like cymbals being struck. Awesome. Before you stands a 7-foot-tall being with broad shoulders and huge feet. His face is gentle and kind. You are not frightened. Runal introduces you. This is Zodak. He is your special guide. Follow him. He will take you where you must go. Can I say goodbye to Carlos? It is not usual. I do not advise it. It might upset him and you. However, if you wish, go and say farewell. I'm a nice person. I think we're going to go say farewell to Carlos. You walk out of the room. The Yeti Zodak accompanies you. Carlos stands outside as he was when you left him. He is frozen in time. He can't hear you, nor can you hear him. You have become a part of a different world. You start to realize some of the consequences of your decision to go to Shangri-La. You say a quiet goodbye to Carlos, even though he cannot hear you, and follow Zodak back into the monastery. Zodak motions for you to follow. He takes one giant step into the air. You look with amazement as he hovers a meter off the ground. Then you step up into the air and you too are suspended above the floor of the monastery. You're levitating. Whoosh! The two of you zoom out of the monastery, right through the walls, up into the sky. You travel at unimaginable speeds, you climb at a dizzying pace, until the two of you stand on top of the sharp, icy crest of Mount Everest. Below you stretch glaciers, mountains, valleys. You see the world from the top. Zodak points to a narrow slot near the topmost point of Mount Everest. He says, "That is the route to Shangri-La." He takes 3 steps, enters the slot, and disappears from sight. You take one last look at the earth about you. You see the clouds rolling up the flat, dry plains of the Punjab in India. You see the curve of the earth. You see the contrail of an airplane far to the south. You step into the narrow chute. It's warm, glistening with the shine of a metal unknown to you. You hover in space in the narrow metal tube. In truth, you are moving at a great speed down through the center of Everest. There is a rose-colored glow around you. Where is Zodak? Some guide, you think, leaving you alone. What's next? With a gentle bump, you come to rest. In front of you is a clear glass door. You push it open, and there stands Zodak. Welcome to Shangri-La. You walk out onto a dark green valley surrounded by low-lying hills. In the distance are high mountains. One of them looks like Everest. You hear music unlike any music you have ever heard before. It is somewhat like the sounds in the monastery, the bells and wind. The sunlight is warm and relaxing. Zodak leads you down a long trail to a 7-story building. It seems to be a fortress, but it is painted white and red and gold. There are no soldiers or guns, only people who smile and greet you as though you are an old friend. It seems so natural. You turn to Zodak and you get a shock. His form has changed. Now he is the mirror image of you. What does that mean? Although you never find out about that, you learn about many things as you stay in the valley. You have the chance to try many activities you could never try before, but only what is available in the valley. You learn to be contented within the limits of the small valley. Second thoughts? One last chance. Is that it? Is that what you want? Okay, you're wrong. Out of the valley of Shangri-La and back to the real world, is it different? Can you do whatever you want? Can you fulfill your dreams? Can you enjoy your life completely, or must you be content within limits? The end. That was a peculiar ending, I would say, considering we decided to go live with a bunch of Yetis. I'm going to go back to the beginning, and instead of going and meeting with Runal, I think we're going to see what happens if I cancel my meeting with him, and then go and try to save Carlos right away. So, Yes, I will decide to cancel the meeting with Runal and search for Carlos. You telephone Mr. Runal at the Foreign Ministry. There's an emergency, Mr. Runal. My friend Carlos is missing at a base camp. I need help right now. Of course, I understand. Please allow me to honor of coming with you. I know the region well. You gladly accept the help of Mr. Runal. His reputation as a mountaineer is excellent. He is able to arrange for a Royal Nepalese Army helicopter to meet you at the Tribhuvan Airport. 2 hours later, you land at the Everest base camp where Carlos was last seen. His red nylon tent is still there, but the storm has erased all footprints. Most reports of the Yeti have them well below base camp, but it is possible that they are up this high, Runal says as the two of you stand by the tent looking at the glacier and the high peaks. So we can search below, the valley below, or go above. Let's go below, because Carlos was looking for Yetis, so. The helicopter stays at base camp and you and Runal descend on foot along a narrow rocky path below the snow line into a pine forest. It takes many hours of careful walking. The trail suddenly becomes very steep and one side falls off more than 1,000 meters to a river gorge. You come to a small stone house with a thatched roof. An old woman sits in the sunlight by the door. Can you tell us if any climbers came by here? My friend is about 5'9", medium build, has dark hair. Runal translates your description into Nepali. The woman nods and says 2 men came by. The younger one left a note. Don't follow. Wait at base camp. Carlos. Runal turns to you with a puzzled look. Carlos is your friend. If it were up to me, I would ignore his message, but you know him better. What now? What do you think? So we can either obey the message and go back to base camp, or ignore the message. You know, I'm a good friend. I am going to actually listen to him and go back to base camp. Probably best to return to base camp, you say. However, it is getting late and the trail back up will be especially dangerous at night. I think we should wait here until dawn, Runal counters. You make arrangements with a woman to spend the night. She brings a simple meal of rice, squash, and buttered tea. You are very nervous, but you trust Carlos's judgment. Whatever is going on is out of your hands for now anyway. You can't sleep, and the wind on the high mountains keeps you restless and heightens your worry. Close to dawn, you hear a high, piercing scream. Yow! The noise seems to be coming from right outside your window. Runal moves quickly to the doorway. The woman is outside the house at the edge of the trail, holding up a battered kerosene lantern. You hear the cry again, this time even louder. Yow! Yow! Suddenly the sound diminishes. It seems to be going further and further away. The woman waves her lantern. Is it a signal, or is she trying to frighten whatever was away? Those are the Yeti, she says. They invite you to join them and your friend Carlos. What should you do? This is more than you had bargained for. You look at Runal and then at the woman. It is chilly in the half-light of morning. The Yeti sound is growing fainter by the minute. You know, let's be adventurous. We're going to follow the Yeti once again. You run down the trail with Runal following. Minutes later, you jerk to a halt. There in front of you is the body of an axe, or a body of a yak, the ox of the high mountains. Its horns have been savagely twisted off. They are now used as markers to point the way from the path to a thick rhododendron and pine grove. You pause, looking at the horrible sight of the dead yak. The horns may be pointing you to Carlos, or they may lead to a trap. So we can take Runal with us for added protection, or leave Runal behind as a guard, because one person can move more quietly and quickly, and go into the grove by yourself. You know, I like added protection, so we're going to bring Runal with us. Cautiously, you and Runal enter the grove. The pale light of dawn does little to illuminate this eerie place. You are both careful not to make noise. Runal tugs at your sleeve and points to the branches of a pine. Hanging from the branches is a red backpack. You approach cautiously. It looked like the pack that Carlos had been carrying. It may have been taken from him, or you might have left it as a warning. We can either retreat now, or you give the special bird call whistle that you and Carlos use as your emergency code. Well, why not try to contact him? Let's do the bird whistle. Tweet, tweet, tweet! Essentially. You have trouble whistling, you are so nervous. Then you repeat the signal, only louder this time. Tweet, tweet, toot, toot! I don't know. There is a sudden crackling of bushes and twigs. You and Runal pull back, ready to run for it. Carlos breaks out of the brush, sees you two, and yells, "Run for it! Run for it!" A camera dangles from his neck, and the three of you leap out of the thicket and make for the trail. You keep on going until you can go no further. Between gasps for breath, Carlos tells you that the Yeti carried him to the thicket and allowed him to photograph a group of 16 Yeti. They told him that now he had what he needed and that they wanted to be left alone. Well, why were we invited, you ask? To help me get back, I guess. I had no idea where I was. You get back to the helicopter and return to Kathmandu with the first pictures the world has ever seen of the Yeti. Fame is now yours. It's the beginning of a great career. The end. Well, that is definitely not the ending that I assumed was going to happen, considering Carlos appeared and just started running immediately. But I think for today we are going to leave it there, and I'll go through some more endings next time. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a wonderful day, and bye-bye.